to be talking about trade unions in Grenada and their role. And as I said, if you have any specific questions, please get onto Facebook, let us know what they are, and we're going to do our best to get them across. Now, as you know, we're already joined by Mr. Ray Roberts, who is the General Secretary for the Grenada Trade Union Council. So good morning again, Mr. Roberts.
And good morning, good to be with you.
Yes, and by Mr. Nicky Steele, leader in the local business community. So good morning, Mr. Steele.
Always a pleasure to be here with you and your team, and good morning to all of your viewers out there.
Yes, good morning. All right, so obviously trade unions have been in the media quite a lot, both sides, positive and negative, for a lot of different reasons. So just wanted to have a little bit of a general chat about trade unions. Mr. Roberts, what would you say the main goals of a trade union are?
Well, let me first of all say morning to the breweries workers. We want you to know that our solidarity is overwhelming. It's unshakable, and we know it's difficult times, but guarantee that the 10,000 plus workers who are affiliated to the Grenada Trade Union Council are certainly behind you. And we know the pain, but clearly it calls for tenacity, and we are sure you're going to demonstrate that. The trade union movement is one of the oldest institutions in the world. Here in Grenada, it has been in the forefront of working people's development. Through its effort to mobilize and organize working people, we have been able to achieve just about everything that you, Mr. Steele, my colleague here this morning, and others are able to benefit from. The labor code was a process, came through the trade union movement and also the employers. So as you can see, we have a bond in society with both employers and government, and on behalf of working people, we lead the struggle.
Okay. Is there any role in terms of, there's a lot of support for workers themselves and in their rights and sticking to the labor code and so on, but what about the other side and making sure that workers actually meet their expectations?
Well, that's not a challenge.
From the employee.
That's
employers.
never ever challenge. That is basically something that we have been doing all the trade union movement in Grenada. The oldest is the GUT. It's 92 years or something like that old. And from that point onwards, the labor movement have been involved in productivity, as I say, initiating things that fortunately the early employers never bothered with. Slavery, we don't know the employers were against slavery, the trade unions were, and they fought that battle. So clearly we have played a role. It is not something overnight that you can fix. It is something that you have to work with over a period of time. And if you look at the trade union movement, we have health insurance that was never given to us by employers. That was something we had to fight for. The benefits, pension plan, I don't know of any. In fact, today employers, some employers don't even want to hear about this. They do contractual labor, and that's where it ends, 1 year, 6 months. So you can see workers in Grenada, without the trade union movement, as far as I am concerned, as far as workers will tell you, they certainly would not be stronger.
Okay. And so there's been a lot of industrial action in Grenada recently. Everybody's struggling, including the businesses themselves. You know, what would you say in regards to people asking for increases in a time where businesses themselves
this has to be
down
on its merit? Well, workers are going home at the same time. Well, let me put it this way. I think it's unfortunate that some people have portrayed the labor movement in that manner. I think they are anti-working people at various levels in Grenada, and without a doubt they would like to have the sort of slavery. You know, we employ people and you can fire them, you can dismiss them, you can treat them any old how. They are great employers. We can pinpoint Sir Roy, who owns Spicing. I don't know if you ever heard of industrial conflict with him. We can call a number of local businesses that have worked with the trade union movement. There don't be any strikes. Let me give you this one. Tao, which is one of our dynamic unions, they were engaging with a certain hotel in the south that really wasn't doing well. Workers reverted to 2009 a salary. I don't think you heard about it because some people don't want to hear about that one. We can talk about 4 or 5 businesses in Grenada where unions weren't able to get any increase. And in fact, workers went back in one company to 2006 a salary. So it's just not a willy-nilly thing that you go and you demand increases. If you're going to talk about the security guards, then we can tell you that while we understand that some can't do it, but we can't tell you, we can't see a bank refusing to pay a worker $2 a month, a security guard who's making what, $5 an hour, $6 an hour right now. We can't see that as an issue. We think some people made it an issue. In some cases, there was no merit. Quite understanding. In other cases, there might have been merit. But we think the negative side was the usual. Some people, I don't want to say all employers because there are great employers in Grenada, but some employers certainly don't want to pay anything to workers. They like what they call the Imani kind of thing. You can pay them $500 and that's it.
And Nikki, to you, I suppose the reverse of that, there are businesses out there that are doing quite well. I suppose, relatively speaking, how would you say, would they justify not giving wage increases?
Well, I think any business outside there now that is proactive, any management, whether it's private sector, public sector, non-for-profit, whatever, you've got to recognize the importance of your human element. And your human element, your employees. And they are your most important contributor to whatever it is that you're doing. Gone are the days where, as far as I'm concerned, union is there to prevent employers from being former slave masters. It's no longer a case of if you're an employer, you're the next generation from slave masters or so. No, that's not the case. You are proactive if you are successful, if you are going to be successful in whatever field you're doing, hotel, automotive, breweries, manufacturing, whatever. You've got to recognize the importance of your employees. And sometimes it comes into conflict as to management's view of what is important for the employees, and union as the collective negotiator for those employees, what is important. It is always assumed that the union has the workers' best interest at heart. The union does have to deal with larger issues sometimes, national issues or national standards that they would like to set or so. But sometimes you do have the unfortunate incidents of coming into conflict, management and labor, in cases where you do have a proactive management and a proactive labor organization present. It does not mean that one of the two are back into slavery mentality or uprising mentality or anything like that. It is a breakdown on issues. Yeah. And it is always unfortunate when it happens.
Well, I'm not too sure some is not a battle on slavery, because clearly what we see happening right now, we don't see the merit in what's going on right now. In fact, we're surprised that employers have not called on their counterparts to have, in this case I'm talking about the breweries actually, to have end that lockout of the workers. And I'm not getting into whether the strike was illegal or not illegal, but what we want is sanity to exist. We don't want a continuing Afghanistan, Taliban. What we want is civil behavior from all. Let the workers go in and continue the process. So really and truly, what we see here is capital, and trade unions don't have a problem with capital. We must have capital to have investment. But what we have a problem with is that what we've seen seemingly now is the trend of, well, let me display power because I have a capital. And let me put it this way, what has evolved out of what we now have in Grenada? We see the need to take it beyond on Grenada, because no business, whether it's Anson McCall or whoever it is, a billion-dollar business, could exist without the working class. They are the ones who buy most of the products. So it seems that we have to get within the OECS and the wider Caribbean and make this thing an issue.
You know, Mark, that sort of brings to light some of the issues that I have. I think if for a healthy negotiating environment to exist, both sides have got to make sure that they're not threatening anything, threatening an escalation, threatening from management point of view, if you don't come to table, we're going to fire, we're going to shut down, we're going to move out. And from the union point of view too, it is essential that they are coming to table and not threatening an escalation. National strike, bringing out their counterpart, membership, etc. So these days we've got to move on, we've got to move beyond that. And if we are dealing with relations with one company and its employees and its trade unions. It's got to remain like that. The rest of us have got to be observers, honest enough with ourselves and with the public to give our opinion on it, but to allow the negotiations to continue. And if we allow and condone escalation, we find ourselves in situations where we are now, which are unfortunate situations.
But you would admit that the trade union have demonstrated extreme discipline here. I hear about a lockout, not a lockout, a closing of the country. I work with the public service. I don't know that we're planning any close down. I don't know the GUT, the teachers are planning any close down. I don't know the seamen are planning any close down. So here again, I don't know that unions in Grenada are planning a close down. What must be made clear is that the unions have certain arsenal and they must be able to use it like the Americans. They have certain
I agree with you, Bray.
So,
but I
hope
admit that there isn't any escalation, but when we use words like arsenal and so it becomes...
No, but nothing wrong in using it. There's a discipline in it. You have your business strategy and you
as
know what
opposed to harmony and
negotiations
and settlement.
You also have a union
Yes,
and they engage you. And the point I'm making, they talk about close down. I don't know that any union in Grenada is planning to close down the country. There's a talk. People will use their ammunition to threaten and so forth. So I like the part you say about engagement, because I think that's what it's all about. But clearly, what I'm saying, I heard one gentleman and the prominent business owner saying yesterday, let it go to court. I thought, well, that's so dumb. I mean, the court takes so long. There's one issue with a hotel since 1995. Workers are now perhaps in their 40s, some have retired. The court has not. Mediation is the best way. Let's engage, as Steele said, around the table and find a middle ground. The court is always something that, as far as I'm concerned, human beings must try to avoid at all costs. If it can't be fixed, then you go there. But just to let it go there without dialoguing, I think that's in my opinion.
I would agree with Ray there. I mean, the arbitration, mediation is usually one of the faster ways for a solution when there is a breakdown with the parties and so. But always, you hope that things can be settled face to face between the two parties on a negotiating table, and that it doesn't have to bring in third and fourth and fifth parties to lend support, to criticize one way or the other or so. At the end of the day, this should not be a national issue.
Yeah.
This is an issue between GBL and its employees, and I fail to see, apart from the issues at hand, why the negotiation of GBL is of national interest, and its union, why it is of national interest. Our national well-being, our economy is coming into question, etc. For this. There are much larger issues that we should be dealing with as a collective society. So that's why I say this whole thing is unfortunate.
And I would hope that you know, the goodness in us, the Christianity in us, certainly come forward, because what is happening here now is that it is focusing people's attention on one single issue, an issue which perhaps some people fear they may be closed down. Families are being hurting. I mean, if you look at that thing, I don't know what great benefits there could be for Anson McCall. I mean, they do business in the OECS, and already other OECS countries are taking an interest in Grenada. So public relation-wise, that can help them. We must buy their products, not necessarily Carib, but their products in the OECS. There are 650,000 of us. I mean, let's take this thing about reasonable time. I mean, in the trade union, we have, as I said, about 10,000 workers. And we are advising the workers, come next election, you have to use your vote if this thing is not changed reasonable time to a specific time. That you look at people who are going to be listening to you and make that adjustment. Workers have to use the power of their vote, you know, to get some things or everything. If we can't negotiate around the table, and I like the principle he came with, we can talk. It must be an issue that we must see a bigger picture in and settle. But what is this war that is on right now? This war is uncalled for. Mistakes may be made on all sides, so let's accept that. But it's time for us to move on, open the gate, let the workers go on, if whatever has to happen, let it happen around the table, give and take, and come to a conclusion. But Grenada is making the news for the wrong reason. A company locks out a group of workers. I mean, a lot of these workers are people who depend, like me, on their salary every month. And what is the goodness in locking these 120 workers outside the gate? They have, I mean, they have their own responsibility too.
Yeah, I agree with you, and I think it is important to understand how we got here. How we got here is as important as to how we are going to get ourselves out. How we got here is important to make sure that we don't get here again with another company or so. So I think we do need to have some public discussion when the dust clears on this as to how we got here, what could have been done differently from the beginning to prevent us from being where we are now. And as this unfolds, that we all observe it as employers, as fellow trade unions, etc., to find the lessons to be learned in this, to make sure that we don't stumble into this quagmire that we find ourselves in again.
No, right. I mean, would you say that in Grenada we rush into the strike option too quickly?
I don't have any evidence of that. I would be just speculating or trying to speculate.
Well, in your opinion?
I don't think the leaders as I've associated with them, I've been with them for quite a number of years. In fact, I've spent much of my life in the trade union movement. I don't know that trade unions in Grenada have been irresponsible. Yes, people make comments. I suppose business people don't like to hear the word that you're going to close down or so forth. Nikki, we haven't had any...
No, I don't think so, but I think this is a prime example of the fact that strikes hurt all concerned. And it's become most obvious here that the option of striking hurts all concerned. And I think the GBL workers can attest to that. And all of us who are observing this can recognize that the strike option is something that hurts everybody. And it should be a last, final resort and should be avoided by all concerned wherever necessary.
But before you go, there's one thing that must be made very clear. Grenadian employers have, for whatever reason, been excellent, exceptional employers. We have worked with the Employers Federation. When Mrs. Smith, Angela Smith, who we paid great tribute to, we never had any major problem. The problem, whether we like it or not, seems to be with these Trinidad companies. I mean, you can check the Trinidad management in Grenada. The GBN thing was with a Trinidad management company. The Breweries, again, is a Trinidad management company. To some extent, one of the banks was a Trinidad management again. So really and truly, we are concerned about that kind of engagement, because clearly, check the CLICO, BICO. I mean, our workers here are the ones, and in the OECS, who are being penalized. We listened to Nunes Teixeira in Trinidad, the former finance minister. We heard how the message got around. All the big boys pick out their dollars and cents. Well, I'm not getting any. So I'm saying, I think the Employers Federation in Grenada needs to engage the I wouldn't want to say expatriates, but the Trinidad particular group, and see how they can bring the harmony that exists with trade unions in Grenada. Because we don't have, I would see, significant problems with any employer in Grenada. Yes,
Ray,
the port
I would
is
say, I mean, I agree with you. I don't think you have significant issue with any employer in Grenada. But as a proud Grenadan employer, I have an issue with singling out employees based on their nationality or their background. Also, I don't think that's the issue.
No choice,
I don't think that's the issue.
That's where they are from.
I think it is for the first time you're coming up against regional companies, and the issue is no longer a purely domestic issue. There are regional issues, and those now put a different element on the table that maybe the trade unions in Grenada are not accustomed dealing with.
No, that's not true.
But it is not an impossibility, and it is not simply because it is a Trinidadian company that negotiations are broken down.
We represent workers in the bank. We represent workers in all strata. What you have is it's an employer who believes in...
I mean, you are asking us to accept just by virtue of the fact that the company is Trinidadian.
No.
The negotiations
the management, we're not talking about
the
company.
management is Trinidadian.
In that case,
that is something different
I
in being Trinidadian.
No. Leave that out.
Negotiations.
No, we don't want to go on that. Whether it's just
so therefore,
we're talking about 4 management companies. Trinidad management companies seems to have generated. I mean, the GBN thing was for basically basic thing. Look what is happening here now. The lockout. What is the one side say 2.5, the other side says 5. What is the difference? You can't find a middle ground there.
But it works for both parties. You can say that Grenadian trade unions seem to have a problem dealing with foreign companies, or you can say foreign companies have a problem dealing with Grenadian trade unions.
The vast majority of foreign companies have worked without spending.
But like I say, if we are going to be mature individuals,
we
have got to prevent the generalization of Trinidadian companies or Barbadian companies or so.
You have to be open and you have to be fair. There seems to be, in the OECS, Grenada moves forward, Grenada opens its door to all countries.
Correct, and we have got to, in order for the doors to be opened up to Grenadians in the OECS and in the CARICOM, we would hate to have any of our CARICOM associates or so single out our Grenadian employees, our Grenadian management, our Grenadian trade unions.
But you have to do it.
So we've got to remove that element.
You can't remove it. You must identify to fix. If your research points to a particular direction, that's what I know. I don't know what other schooling I can tell you about. The point I'm making, employers in Grenada, and we have dealt with American employers, we seem to have a specific problem with that particular group of management. They don't care. I mean, let's start with it. The Prime Minister asked to unlock the place and let the workers. We ignore that. We ignore just about every authority in Grenada.
You seem to be privy to a lot more than I am. I don't know that there was a statement on that or so, but if there was...
I know the minister was on, unless you don't follow the news. I follow, in fact, I write the news, so that's why I follow the news. But I am not here to defend it. I'm just want to be fair with you. And I'm not going to go along that road. That won't value me. I don't think that will value. I want to compliment the Grenadian employers and suggest to the local federation that these managers from this particular, we love Trinidadians. We don't have a problem with it. But we're saying something is wrong when you have a company
with Trinidadian management.
No, precisely. They seem to have a
All right. Ray, we would agree to disagree. I think the comment is ridiculous.
Move on from this. I have a question on BBM here from one of our viewers, and the question is directed to Ray. Ray, do you think that the illegal strike action and its repercussions for the workers has undermined the confidence that other unionized workers have in union representation? And do you think that TAU will be able to gain mass support if they were to call for solidarity strike action right now?
I can't dignify that. That don't make much sense. That is just an opinion without any substance. So I wouldn't dignify that.
Okay.
I think the future will tell on that.
Okay.
What I can assure you is that TAU, even in this period, they have increased their membership. Trade unions in Grenada are getting stronger. I mean, people are seeing what is happening. So people, the only thing you have is the labor code, you know. I know people who are totally anti-trade union. When management rid themselves of them, they pick up the labor code, which we call the Bible. And that is big managers we're talking about. Okay, that's what is left in us. That is the only how you will get your compensation. The employers, I don't know, genuinely come forward and give you anything.
All right.
Well, maybe Nikki does.
Do you think that if businesses had better labor relations with their workers and with the unions, that this type of action wouldn't be necessary?
Well, I think first off, Mark, labor relations is a term that is dying in business. It's human relations that we speak of. It's an HR, it's human relations, it's a human element. And once you have that approach, you find that things are positive, regardless of whether your workers are unionized, non-unionized, whether you have hundreds of workers or 1 or 2 workers. You've got to recognize that it's human relations. They're your most important element. They are the success or failure of your business. And you move forward with that mindset. You make sure that they are rewarded or remunerated as best as possible. And that is a motivator for them to come to work, a motivator for them to do good for you, to be productive in whatever it is that you're doing, then yes, you have improved relations with your trade union or whatever bargaining body. You will find you will have those good relations. At some point, sometimes those relations may break down on an issue, a specific issue where management will make a stand and the negotiating body will make a stand on it. It is always hoped that you are able to come to table, whether with raised voices or not, or strong positions or strong beliefs on the issue, but settle. Because at the end of the day, whoever is at table from management or collective bargaining, trade union or so, you are representing the human element of the company. And you've got to make sure at the end of that process, the human element, your employees, those people who have families, who make a sacrifice on a daily basis, are not affected negatively, or that their effects are minimized. I'm saying both parties, because GBL didn't start this process by locking out the workers. The trade union or the collective negotiating body started this process, or first off, removed the labor from the breweries. It was when the collective body tried to bring the labor back.
How you know that?
Or agreed to bring the labor back.
You spoke with the trade
that
union?
There was a problem of lockout.
You spoke with the trade union?
I'm saying, as I've been watching the news too.
Oh, I thought you had engaged the trade union.
But
we would like you to engage them.
That's a specific issue. What
no,
we were talking about is in general.
Engage them and see.
In general, you want to make sure
the woman who sent the
that the human element is not affected, and in this specific case, at present, the human element is affected. And when we do a post-mortem on this, we can see at what point did the human element begin to be, or their interests begin to be jeopardized. At what point?
No, Ray, I mean, what do you think about union leaders lying down in the road to block a company entrance? Is this standard union practice?
Around the world,
that's sanctioned by the unions?
They display their solidarity, their belief. You don't make money in the trade union. You don't make money in the trade union. Trade union is a volunteer, basically give it for working class people. There is no CEO that makes $10,000 and $15,000 in the trade union movement. I mean, I wouldn't tell you the salary of these fellas, but certainly it's a very, very token income. I don't get a salary from the trade union movement. I've been in it. I don't get anything from it. I use my car to do everything. So it's a form of demonstrating your passion and solidarity. It doesn't happen alone in Grenada. If you go in other parts of the world, people do everything that is possible and within reasonable judgment as to get. I mean, you have a happy job. Nobody's taking your job. Remember, you brought scab labor in, and you know, it seems like some employers are happy with that. And you have the legitimate workers who have voted, called by the ministers to ask them to terminate the action. They voted overwhelmingly to go back to work. Turned up there, you promised an announcement January 3rd, and now it's January what? Today is what, the 15th or 16th? And you have not, again, allowed the workers back. So the employer, in this case, has declared war on poor people, poor working people, unsympathetic in this case, and unapologetic. And we would hope that you know, those who want to see it go to court a reasonable time. In the history of Grenada, that has never ever been a dispute. In the history of Grenada, reasonable time. The bank that is next door to you, RBTT, they knew about reasonable time. They never exploited that. I mean, what is going on there is certainly a demonstration to poor people and workers how cruel a multi-billion or trillion-dollar employer can be. But as I said, it's something you have to take across the OECS, not to in any way look for war or confrontation, but to warn workers. You have to be, it's like the Clico Bico. I want you to keep that in mind. I know workers who have for 40 years paid that company, and today they say, Ray, at 60, I'm looking for a work with Mark, 25-year-old Mark, and Nikki wouldn't employ them. They're too old. Their hair getting gray like mine. So this pretty little young lady there, I can't compete with her anymore. She knows all the technology. So I want you to keep that in mind.
But Clico Bico, I don't see where it is a labor issue apart from the fact that people's pensions and
Mainly
people's
workers,
savings
mainly
have
workers.
disappeared.
Mainly workers.
Well, it's
Mainly workers.
ridiculous for you to say mainly workers, because most pension funds are contributory between company and employees.
No, that's not the dispute. I'm talking about
Both, aren't they
mainly
both?
worker-
Aren't they contributory between?
Precisely,
Correct.
you're right.
So how can you have mainly workers if
Workers
most pension
are the ones,
funds
poor,
are both?
working class people are the ones that are in the vast majority. In Grenada, the vast majority of people make less than $3,000 a month.
The issue
in salary.
simply is that Clico-Bico has had a negative effect on this economy and all individuals who have money in there. Whether the individual is a worker, an employee,
No, well,
or
I'm
a
here to
company.
represent workers.
Well, I am not here representing a particular segment, but I'm able to look at the whole picture
I'm
and
not
say
too
that
sure
the
about
workers,
that. I
not
heard you-
because
I
I'm
heard
not
you
here
defending
representing
capital.
workers, am I
have
not able
heard you utter a
to see
word
workers are
of
not
sympathy,
affected.
a call to the bureaus for these 120 workers. I have not heard you. In fact, I heard one man on a program yesterday saying, let it go to court. I'm just telling you, we had one
I
issue
am
with a
looking
hotel
on at the
that is
situation
15 years
with the
old in a
breweries.
court.
Now,
no,
the
no,
fact
you
that
can't look on. You have to be a participant.
it has come to an unfortunate situation.
That's not the
Now,
one.
I am,
that's
I
not the
am,
one. I want to
I
hear
am
you say this
open-minded
morning.
enough to
Management
see
of breweries,
that the
please
management didn't
engage.
lock the workers out
I'm not going
first.
back to that.
But we must go back to that, Ray. How did the workers first get outside of that gate?
I
All right,
understand.
let's move on from the breweries a little bit. I want to keep it a little bit more general. I think we've spoken a lot about the
Okay,
specifics.
okay.
What do you see as the future for trade unions?
I think we're going to get stronger. I think, as I said, next election we're going to have to be an active participant in telling workers how important their votes are, and to look for candidates and to look for a government that certainly would, whoever will certainly advocate a lot of workers' issues. Trade unions are not getting weaker. I mean, there's a period with the Margaret Thatcher period when there was a destabilizing of trade unions. So you bring in contract workers, but contract workers are now coming to the realization that at 25, 30, you become a sort of veteran, and the employer goes over to a younger group that is less, cost less. So if you look at it, the trade unions, obviously, that's your best friend. When you are fired, that's your best friend when you're looking for job security. So at this particular point, what I know, we are under pressure to do a lot more, but workers still have that believability that the trade union movement is certainly challenged to do more, and I don't see the trade union movement disappearing from Grenada and the world. No, in fact, in which country? Nike had a problem that was about 15 years ago. Malaysia with Nike. Okay, they paid a token court thing of $1 million to hundreds of workers. But the point is, it shows that the believability of the trade union movement, not just in Grenada, but around the world, is getting stronger.
I would agree. I think there is a role that has to be played by the trade union movement in the development of our country, in the development of most advanced societies. Responsible collective bargaining on the part of labor must exist. The trade unions throughout Canada, UK, New Zealand, Australia, our Commonwealth, bigger brothers and sisters there, play a definite role, positive role there. And it has nothing to do with whether they're strikes or not strikes, or so they represent the interest of the workers and make sure that the workers' interests are always heard collectively. So there is definitely a role for the trade union movement. I am not a supporter, definitely, of the weakening of the trade union movement in Grenada or of the disappearance of the trade union movement in Grenada. I would like to see the status quo maintained, and if anything, the strengthening of relations and the trade union movement on the whole.
That's a
responsible,
good potential, a politician.
responsible
That's a potential
bargaining, though.
politician.
Responsible. If there is a company that is carrying on irresponsibly, or if there is a trade union that is carrying on responsibly or irresponsibly, let us call a spade a spade.
Okay. All right. Well, I'd like to thank the two of you for coming on this morning. Obviously, there's a lot of information, a lot of emotion, a lot of passion with trade unions in general, and this was specific recent events have heightened that But thank you both very, very much for coming on and sharing your points of view. And look forward to having you both on the show again some other time, discussing something else, hopefully.
Thank you, Mark. As always, a pleasure.
Thank you very, very much for coming on.